So imagine your paycheck goes into your account, it gets taken out, and then more money gets taken out, and amounts that don't even match the payroll. One employee had their account go negative $999,000, a withdrawal of like $1 million. Everybody's freaking out. Nobody knows what is happening. Apparently, MyPayrollHR had just shut down, and like reporters going to their office in Clifton Park, it was empty. There were no employees. There was no sign. It just like disappeared. Welcome to the Cloud Accounting Podcast. I'm Blake Oliver.
And I'm David Leary. Blake, here we are, another week.
Another day, another dollar.
I got some news stories this week. QuickBooks Live had an update. Teeny update on Visor. Apparently, people are discovering their 2017 taxes were not filed. So that continues on.
Well, David, like that sounds great and everything, but I have what may be the biggest story in Cloud Accounting Podcast history. Bigger than QuickBooks Live, MyPayrollHR. We talked about this at the end of last episode. I kind of like buried the lead.
Well, kind of the story broke, right? When we were recording, like we had no time. I was upset at the podcast. I was like, why didn't you tell me about this over the weekend? I could have just deep dived on this for hours.
Oh, it's crazy. And so I've been following this since we did our last episode, and it is just a mess. So MyPayrollHR is a payroll processor based in Clifton Park, New York. Small payroll company. So think, Intuit Payroll or Gusto, but these guys have only 4,000 customers, mostly small businesses, small and medium businesses. Picture a restaurant with 12 employees, or actually picture a senior care service in San Antonio, which has 1,500 employees in 23 states. So pretty big group of clients. So 4,000 of those kind of small businesses, small to medium.
Yeah. And then I think they were around for 12 years. So they were legit. They were legit payroll company. They were around for about 12 years. Yeah. They, I think they kind of carved out a niche with a lot of temp staffing agencies.
Well, the big news is that, let's see, it's Friday, September 13th as we record. So on Thursday, September 5th, MyPayrollHR sent out an email, a very brief email to all of its customers, and I'll read that email. They said, "Dear client, we regret to inform you that due to unforeseen circumstances, we are no longer able to process any further payroll transactions. Please find alternative methods for processing your payrolls. For any payroll batches submitted during this week, including any payroll reversals from last week, please be prepared to find an alternative method to pay employees. We are working to release any funds that are in transit as a result of this matter. We will provide you with updates via this medium as we receive them."
Okay, so a company's going to fold. They're going under.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a big deal because in theory, the payroll and the payroll taxes that are being moved should be going through like an escrow account. That should get to the employees and okay, fine. So next week's payroll, I'm done. I have to start I have to find a new payroll provider. Well,
actually, no, they said the email says like that this week's payroll is not going to happen. So actually that they're already going out of business. And now I have to suddenly find a new way to pay my employees like today.
I got to pay my employees. Yes.
So that's a big red flag, right? So this was again, Thursday, the 5th of September. What happened, according to a customer of MyPayrollHR, Agape Animal Rescue, Tanya Willis was interviewed about this. On Thursday, the 5th, an employee called her. She's the executive director at this animal rescue. And the employee said that the deposited pay had been withdrawn from her account. And apparently it happened to all 7 of the animal rescue organization's employees. So Willis called MyPayrollHR, which is doing their payroll. So
normally with payroll, the direct deposit happens, it's in your account, and it's in your account. Like, I mean, I've been direct deposited for 25 years and I've never had the payroll ever withdrawn.
Right. So imagine your payroll goes in and then all of a sudden it goes back out. So the employees are starting to freak out. So Willis called MyPayrollHR and she told a reporter that an employee said there was a, quote, glitch in the system to keep track of the missing money and that there were no worries. There obviously wasn't a glitch in the system, and the worries were just beginning because money continued to drain out of the animal rescue employees' personal accounts. It didn't stop with just one paycheck reversal. Most of the employees had multiple reversals, so now their bank accounts are negative. So imagine your paycheck goes into your account, it gets taken out, and then more money gets taken out. And the amounts, there are various customer stories in the articles that have been written over the last week and a half, amounts that don't even match the payroll. One employee had their account go negative $999,000, a withdrawal of like $1 million. Crazy, right? Everybody's freaking out. Nobody knows what is happening. apparently MyPayrollHR had just shut down, and like reporters going to their office in Clifton Park, it was empty. There were no employees. There was no sign. It just like disappeared.
And then this is where like the smaller local media really started picking this up in each town.
Yeah.
And I know the local media picked up in Tucson, Arizona. I saw there's just everywhere there's a small business and there's employees that have money getting withdrawn. It's a great local story, right? Everybody was kind of jumping on that.
Because these customers are all over the country. They're not just in New York State, right? So yeah, like business owners are calling their local news station and saying, hey, this is a story. You guys should cover this. So it starts getting picked up on like local TV news. Right. The same way the malware infections are starting to get picked up. Right. It's this like grassroots kind of news story that starts happening, percolating all over the country. The press, the national press, the industry press, right, or at least the folks focused on security, HR, start to pick up on this. And so now we're starting to get more details. Like this week, we started to get a lot more details about what is going on.
Because it didn't make any sense. None of this made any sense, right? Like everything, we've never seen a company just shut down and completely vanished like this. One of the surprising things was Governor Cuomo in New York State.
Yep.
Last week, issued a press release that they're going to start investigating. They're reaching out, jumped all over that.
Yeah, I'll read this statement. So Governor Cuomo issued a press release that said, the sudden and unexplained shutdown of MyPayrollHR in Clifton Park is disturbing and completely unacceptable. Its reckless actions have left employees across the state and the nation with negative bank accounts and forced businesses who depend on its payroll services to scramble and find ways to compensate their employees. These businesses and workers deserve answers, and I'm calling on the Department of Financial Services to investigate this irresponsible company's actions. This is not how we do business in New York, and we will not allow these bad actors to take money away from the hardworking people in the state. So that was one of like the first like really high-level political executive responses to this. Right.
And then on Twitter, people were getting very accusatory of the banks involved, of MyPayrollHR, because I think from the employee's perspective, they just see this bank that they don't know. I mean, I don't know. Nobody knows what bank is doing ACH deposit, but they're seeing these withdrawals. And so these people are panicking, like some sort of like people are hacking into their own individual accounts and stealing money. And it's very, very confusing for everybody involved. And the accusations that were on Twitter were really getting rampant.
And there's a private Facebook group that was created for the employees who were affected. There's thousands of people in that group now. I'm not in that, so I don't know what's going on, but I know that some of the folks in the accounting community are in there helping to counsel them, tell them, what to do with your bank if you want to get your money back, all that stuff. But let's talk about like what actually happened, because I think I finally pieced together the outline of how this potential fraud was perpetrated.
Because twice a day, there's been some new piece of information.
So here's what we know. So MyPayrollHR, based in Clifton Park, New York, the CEO is named Michael Mann, but you found, David, he's like invisible online, like very difficult to track down, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't find a picture of him.
Because immediately when I saw this, I started going to their LinkedIn pages, looking around, poking around, and nobody has images. They're not there. The name's been removed. It's just initials. Right, his LinkedIn profile, and you start Google searching, and this guy just doesn't. These people don't exist. I was actually kind of surprised at how invisible they were.
The company MyPayrollHR is owned by a holding company called ValueWise Corporation. That website was shut down, no longer online, although you can access it through Wayback Machine and see old versions of it, which some of the reporters have been doing. MyPayrollHR has been around for 12 years. Michael Mann apparently bought the company 6 years ago. It was operating just like a normal, small payroll company. Now, here's how it went down. Here's how this whole thing went down. And this has to do with the way that payroll services actually make direct deposits happen. So payroll services don't have the ability to move money themselves. They have to partner with a payment processor. And in this case, the payment processor, there were two of them. The one handling most of the money was called Cachet Financial Services, or Cachet, however they pronounce that, right? They're based in Pasadena. The way MyPayrollHR would normally process a payroll is they would generate essentially a text file. I believe they don't say it in the article, but I'm guessing like a CSV. And that file tells the payment processor which employer accounts to debit and which employee accounts to credit for their net payroll checks. Pretty simple, right? The way the money moves is Cachet, the payment processor, reads those instructions, and then debits the employer accounts. The money goes into a clearing account that Cachet controls, and then it gets taken from that account and credited into the employee accounts. And that all happens very quickly.
And a company like Cachet might be providing this service for hundreds of payroll companies.
Right.
Okay.
And they have an account with the National Clearinghouse, NACHA, that manages ACH among all the banks.
ACH, yeah. Got it.
And that payment processor also has a bank partner, right, to manage the clearing accounts. And in this case, the banking partner of the payment processor is Pioneer Bank. Apparently what happened is that text file, that with the payment instructions or the money moving instructions that came from MyPayrollHR contained manipulated account numbers.
Cachet had the numbers to put money in employees' accounts. Then Cachet realized, wait a second, we never got our part of the money to be putting in people's accounts, and that's why they went to retrieve it, because they basically...
Yeah. So according to the lawyer for Cachet, MyPayrollHR manipulated the account numbers in the electronic file so that the money was taken out of the employer account and put into an account controlled by MyPayrollHR, not the Cachet settlement account as it should have been. So instead of money going from the employer into the settlement account or the clearing account, it went into an account controlled by MyPayrollHR. Cachet had already initiated the transfer of the funds from their settlement account into the employee funds, making that account go negative.
And this is the same process. So for 12 years, assuming they were partners in this for 12 years, Cachet every week we get that file.
Yep.
Import it in, payroll runs, do it every single week. And so they really had no reason to suspect a partner of 12 years, this file would have manipulation inside of it.
And so then here's where things started to get really messed up. Apparently, Cachet, and actually this is according to their lawyer, realized what was happening, but too late. The money had already been moved into the employee accounts. And so they initiated reversals to get its money back. The lawyer, Slavkin, I think it's Lisa Slavkin, said it's a standard process. But they messed up when they initiated that reversal because the first reversal wasn't coded properly. And so then they sent a second file. I guess the banks should have ignored the first file, but they didn't. So that's why so many employees had two paycheck amounts withdrawn from their accounts.
I mean, I can see how that happens, right? You're Cachet, right? You're probably in a panic. Oh my God, we outlaid $26 million. We did not get the $26 million we were supposed to get.
Yeah.
And somebody raced to go start to recover that money. And then a mistake was made. Then a second mistake was made. So yeah.
Yeah. So right now, just knowing what I know, I'm thinking this is crazy that a payroll processor could send a file with payment instructions to Cachet, and there's no internal controls to prevent the account numbers from being changed. Like the Cachet would simply execute without checking instructions saying to debit all of these employer accounts and credit an account controlled by MyPayrollHR and not Cachet's settlement account. Right?
Well, didn't Cachet even kind of half admit this, that saying that they have policies and procedures, they've had to stop external threats, external hackers.
Right.
They've stopped external fraud. Something internal like this they didn't see coming.
Yeah, so they apparently weren't prepared for an internal threat like this or a partner threat. And then there's a big question I have about whether or not it was even proper for them to reverse these employee transfers, because according to an article on a site called Personnel Today, which seems to be like an HR publication, it may not even have been appropriate. According to NACHA rules, you can't just debit an employee's account for a valid payroll transaction, right? Like Cachet was trying to claw back the money, but that wasn't appropriate, potentially.
So there's a possibility they broke some standards or some laws by trying to recover that money.
Yeah, and Cachet actually had a change of heart, like after the employees started freaking out and the banks started calling and abandoned that process, because the employees who were quick to notice this was happening and do something called their banks and said, hey, these are not valid ACH debits, stop them. And then the banks that were doing better customer service actually did and stopped those ACH debits.
And just a side note, side conversation on this, I saw a lot of that chatter on Twitter. It was like people who had smaller banks, they were getting better customer service and these things were getting stopped. But the major banks, the Bank of Americas, the Chases, et cetera, weren't stopping this.
So that is kind of like what we know about Cachet. Their response, I think, with the press had something to be desired. Wasn't there a quote from that lawyer Something like,
oh, they're the victim. They're the only victim in this.
She said, really, we're the only victim. Yeah.
Which I kind of get, because when it's all said and done, the employees are going to get their money, right? But they're not only not the only victim, because there's also, when you pay employees, you have to have federal money to pay, or you have to pay the tax deposits.
Right.
Well, apparently that bank there's a different ACH company that handles the tax deposits. Apparently they're claiming that they're out of money now as well.
So yeah, there were two separate processors, one for the payroll tax, one for the net paychecks. They both seem to have been scammed. Here's what's interesting is that I'm trying to figure out this timeline. How did this happen? Apparently, the last time that Cachet was in touch with Michael Mann, the owner of MyPayrollHR, was on September 4th, the day before this all went down. Cachet was trying to do a conference call with Mann and Pioneer Bank. Apparently, Pioneer had already frozen his Pioneer account. And Mann told Cachet that he would call them back in 15 minutes, but he never called back. And then he never responded to phone calls. So there was this sign that there was a problem in that the bank account had been frozen. And yet Cachet still allowed this payroll ACH file to be uploaded like normal. And there's also this loan from Pioneer Bank, right? About that. What was this loan? Yeah.
So Pioneer Bank, coincidentally, is in the same business park as MyPayrollHR.
They share a parking lot.
They share a parking lot. Okay. They're right there. So, and it makes sense, right? Businesses are like this, right? You're like, hey, you see these guys every day. I'm going to take my business to that business because it's what I know. They're right there.
Right.
They're almost coworkers in a sense of a word, right? You see these people that are in the same office building, right? Yep. And apparently, and I don't know how much they worked with MyPayrollHR. They may have just been MyPayrollHR's bank, but not MyPayrollHR's. They're not doing the actual payroll part of the processing, right? They're not part of that part of the equation. But apparently they gave a loan of $36 million to MyPayrollHR and provided $16 million of it already. And then they also report that there's some sort of, and this is in the article, quote unquote, deposit activity from the payroll company. So normally that...
Right, because the employer money was diverted from the settlement account at Cachet to Pioneer Bank.
Correct.
So I'm wondering, here's my theory. Michael Mann got a loan from Pioneer Bank. Pioneer Bank advanced $16 million of it. The bank said that. They had to file this report with the SEC about the exposure, right? So Pioneer Bank gave him $16 million. Michael Mann withdraws that money. Pioneer Bank sees that huge withdrawal and freezes his accounts because that probably went against his loan agreement, I imagine. So he grabs the money, they freeze his accounts, and then he has the money from Cachet, diverts that into the Pioneer Bank accounts. And maybe that unfroze it. And then he was able to get the money out. That's my theory.
Yeah.
And he's already out of the country, probably, if he got away with it. There was all this shady behavior going on, apparently, the day before, and yet this still happened. FBI is investigating. They've tweeted out asking for information. If anyone knows about anything, they should email mypayrollhrvictims@fbi.gov. Provide your company contact information, number of employees, and the estimated financial impact to your business and the employees. And then this has, made the national news. Like I said earlier, it was on NBC Nightly News last night. It was on CBS this morning. It made Fox News.
And it's fascinating because I think there's a lot of unknowns. The actual money and where's the money at is the biggest question.
Where's Michael Mann?
Right? But the money feels like they could trace that. It feels like, okay, it moved from this bank to this bank to this bank. And so there's probably parts of the story that are not public yet.
Yeah.
Right. Where this guy is, were there co-conspirators involved?
Yeah. Maybe somebody at the bank, right? At Pioneer Bank. Because I'm thinking that maybe he wired the money out of the country. And if that happened, right, and there's no extradition treaty, there's no way to get the money back, right, then he really did get away with it. What else is the end game? Was it fraud in the sense that he's trying to steal the money, or was it just he was trying to keep a business afloat until he could get this loan from Pioneer Bank, right? And he was just trying to play the game to survive.
That, or is he compromised? Right?
Yeah.
Was he planning this for a very, 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 very long time? Right? Was this a long play? He bought it 6 years ago and he had this long play to do this?
So here's the thing, though, is something that makes me question whether or not it was fraud or makes me think it was fraud was this email to the employees that you found.
Yes. That was very strange.
So here's the email that went out to the employees. The employees, apparently, most of them didn't know this was happening, which would explain why on Thursday, when that woman called MyPayrollHR, the business owner, the executive director who, was questioning it, like the employee said, "Oh, it's just a bug. We'll fix it." Here's the email that went out to the employees. I think this was on like Thursday, same time when the clients found out, but I'm not sure exactly. It says, "Hi all, I am sorry to inform you that it is now official that MyPayrollHR will no longer be conducting business. I am lucky to have worked with you all and wish you the best. If you had a personal belongings at the office, you can meet Bob and I tomorrow morning between 8:30 and 9 to get those. In an effort to avoid any safety concerns or potential media attention, we gathered some personal belongings from a few people's desks. We will be in the Price Chopper parking lot over closer to the liquor store. We will have the key fobs disabled so that you do not need to travel in to get those to us. We recommend that you log into the website to get your last 2 pay stubs. You can certainly print them all if you would like. We do not know how long we will have access to that information." And then there's like information about health insurance, and they say they don't even know if it's been terminated or, here you look it up.
It was like this email was from their HR person because they cover unemployment, they cover COBRA health insurance type stuff, they cover about their 401k plan. So somebody obviously cared about the employees. So like they said, like they were a legit company. That's what's even crazier about this. It wasn't.
It's just nuts. So that's the story as well as we can. Hopefully that made sense. That timeline is the best I can reconstruct it, and we'll certainly be talking about this, I think, in the weeks to come.
Well, there's a bunch of side action too on this.
Oh yeah.
So there's all these other payroll companies. All of them have been out there on social media, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, was the worst. I feel like every ADP sales rep had the exact same message, like, let's have it affected by the MyPayrollHR. Give us a call, right? Like, so they're just capitalizing this from a marketing perspective. And it's so bad that one company even they flat out stole somebody else's content. So do you know Shannon Thesis?
Online, yes.
She's a bookkeeper accountant in our industry. Mm-hmm. She, on Facebook, put out a post about what people should do if they were affected by this, like a valuable content post. And another company, a payroll company called American Time and Labor, stole her content and put it out as their own in a press release. And a bunch of places all picked up the press release because that was in Business Wire. So I kind of find it ironic that a payroll company used fraudulent marketing techniques to capitalize on the fraudulent behavior of another payroll company.
Not the right way to do PR, not the ethical response, and how crazy shady.
This episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast is sponsored by BQE Core. If you have niche clients that are architects, engineers, consultants, or lawyers, BQE Core is the app for them to best manage their firm, increase their staff productivity, and ultimately increase their profits. Even if you don't have those niche clients, Core is a great tool to use in your own accounting or bookkeeping firm as well. Core is an easy-to-use all-in-one platform for project management, but includes advanced functionality like budgets, labor costs, forecasting, contract analysis, and approval processes. Core also includes a standalone accounting module. Even though Core is an all-in-one platform, it still works nicely with other apps, offering you and your clients the maximum amount of flexibility. Core offers a full-function mobile app and recently launched a cutting-edge voice-based assistant for your smart speaker of choice. To learn even more about BQE Core, head over to cloudaccountingpodcast.promo/core. That is cloudaccountingpodcast.promo/CORE.
So here's my takeaway from this. Apparently, payroll services like this are not regulated, and so that could change based on this. And there have been other payroll fraud stories. Earlier this year, KeyBank filed a lawsuit against a payroll processing company in Indiana for apparently a $122 million overdraft. I can't name them off the top of my head, but I have heard of other smaller payroll service frauds issues,
And somebody sent me our link to an article in Australia. Apparently, the son of the head of Australian Tax Office, which is like the IRS, he committed some huge $150 million payroll fraud.
Oh, wow.
With lavish gifts and mistresses and the whole 9 yards. It was,
and it's almost easier to do a payroll fraud than to do like a bill pay or a bookkeeping fraud because the reports are so complex. Most business owners never read them. And even if you're in a CPA firm, you're doing payroll like manually, how many partners actually go and like look at the detail of these payroll reports before they sign them? We talked at the Accountex conference with Dawn Brolin, who's a fraud expert, and that interview will be coming out soon. And she mentioned payroll as being one of the top threats, that payroll fraud is like super common. Not necessarily a service itself, but like people manipulating the payrolls to pay themselves extra or more, or create fake employees, like all that stuff. It's something you got to really keep your eye on if you're a business owner or if you're a CPA who has anything to do with payroll for your clients.
Couple takeaways here. One is the import files. And this goes back to like everybody like, oh, I'm just going to take some file, a CSV file, right? Or the old IF files for QuickBooks back in the day and import those in.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, there is no error checking on those. And so you're just risking your data. You're risking data corruption, or in this case, data fraud. And so this is why APIs are much more secure. I'm surprised. And this goes back to the ACH system itself. It's fundamentally what, 1971 was created?
Yeah. 72? It's essentially ACH is people uploading a bunch of text files with account numbers and routing numbers. Like that is an amounts and maybe a description line, right? Like that is how basic it is. And so that's why it's actually really easy to manipulate a payment instruction file. Apparently what happened here is like you can literally just open it up on Excel, modify it, save it, and then upload it and just change all the numbers, which if you had like some sort of online system, you could have controls in place to prevent that from happening, or you'd have alerts. Yeah, the whole industry just needs to catch up. And I think we might see some regulation. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if one of the presidential candidates had a statement come out this next week.
Oh, this is right up Elizabeth Warren's, like, absolutely. Elizabeth Warren's going to make the podcast again.
Oh, man.
It's right out of there. There's a startup company that it's called Daily Pay. So it's, again, one of those companies where you get paid every day. They look at your time records, and we talked about these last week. These they're not really payroll advance or payday loans, but they're just paying you instantly, right, for your day's work.
Yeah, it's basically a payday loan. It's just under a different, it's another way of doing it.
Yeah, but they don't charge, a lot of them aren't charging the employees, because what they're doing is they're charging the companies, because the companies are providing this as a service or benefit to their employees, right? So anyways, this company, Daily Pay, they actually set up a relief fund of $25,000 to cover any of the overdraft or late fees that employees may have suffered because of this. That
is the way that you build goodwill. You don't capitalize on the pain of people by advertising to them, actually help them out. That's great.
Except for, and I have mixed feelings on this, because I clicked the link to go to it, and you can't actually fill out the form there. You got to send an email. So they're going to gather the email of every employee that's been affected by this, and now they can market their service to these employees. I question it a little bit. I think the intentions are good, but there should just be a form, let people fill out, submit receipts, and work on getting a refund. But it's immediately send us your email address.
That's the big story. I mean, we've almost taken up our entire time here today. Is there anything else we want to talk about?
So yeah, I think we've kind of beat that story. I imagine we'll have more information next week, because I think you're going to start seeing the money trail, and he's going to have to be most wanted. I mean, people have got to be looking for this guy at this point. There's too much money. Yeah. There's $35 million just gone. Want to jump into regular news?
Yeah. So David, what else is new?
QuickBooks Live has their September update out. They've been really proactively communicating all the changes they're doing. They're now running some new tests on their website, which they're going to test some tiered pricing points based on your annual expenses.
I was wondering when this would happen, given that up till now, it's been a straight $400 a month, no matter what kind of business you are, no matter how big or small you are. That just doesn't seem sustainable to me. Yeah.
So this is kind of that next tier of on their journey of trying to figure out how this is going to be priced. Other than that, I didn't really see any other updates related to this. It's just really this new tiered pricing.
So let's look at the pricing. I just opened up the page. Thank you for the link. So tier 1 is $200 a month, and that is for 0 to 25,000 in annual expenses. Tier 2, $400 a month. That is for 25,000 to 150,000 in annual expenses, not revenue expenses, which I think is important because a lot of businesses are pre-revenue when they sign up. And tier 3 is $600 a month, and that is for 150,000 plus, which that leaves a lot of room, given that the potential market for QuickBooks Live is it could be up to $10 million a year in revenue, or at least $1 million. And from 150,000 to $1 million is a lot of range. So
Yeah, and so maybe they have more, but in the grand scheme of the bell curve of QuickBooks users, most are probably going to fall into tier 1, tier 2.
This is so funny though, because it's like watching Intuit build a bookkeeping service and go through all the same like mistakes that I did. And I've seen other people go through, like they're doing the same thing. It's like first you start out with just one price. And then you realize, okay, some clients are much more complex. Let's create tiers, and we'll see a lot more sophistication as the months go on.
Yeah. Well, what I actually like about them basing it off the expenses versus like number of transactions, because you might have number of small transactions that are the same, but they're low, and it's just me being a small business owner now. Like I feel much more comfortable with a model like this than. Because I feel like, okay, it's tied to my realistic expectations of what I can afford and I can pay versus just a random number of pieces of paper or something that I have to scan in.
I agree with you. Hey, I got something app related. Here's an article that popped up on Inc.com, the 10 coolest offices of 2019. Right there on the list is Gusto in San Francisco. I don't know when it was, last year, a couple of years ago. It was recent. They bought a warehouse on Pier 70 in San Francisco and turned that into the Gusto headquarters. It's like super cool. You got to look at the pictures. It is like this 3, 4, 5-story warehouse, and they left the original crane that moves horizontally through the warehouse in the space. I'm not sure I'd want to sit under the crane, but
that stuff's safe.
Yeah. Hopefully in an earthquake, that thing won't come down, but it looks pretty cool. If you're in San Francisco and you're a Gusto partner, definitely go check it out and say hi to Will Lopez.
Some follow-up. We'll put a link in the show notes, but if you're interested in learning more about the Clio story and their $250 million raise, the CEO was interviewed on a podcast called Law Next. And it really goes a little bit deeper than some of their blog posts. And it's a good conversation he had with Bob and Brogy on that site.
Yeah.
So
that was something we talked about last episode. So if you missed that, check out episode 111, all the details about the Clio giant fundraise of $250 million.
I think I mentioned it briefly, but it looks like Visor Tax. So way back when we did episode 70, we talked about Visor Tax. So Visor Tax was a tax service that was promising, hey, for $99, we'll do your taxes. And you get 24/7 access to a CPA. It turns out like CPAs weren't doing the taxes. It turns out worse than that, taxes weren't even being filed. It was kind of a big nightmare last April for tax deadlines. Yeah. But then I saw recent tweets. People are complaining that they're discovering their 2017 taxes were never filed.
So is like Visor still in business? Are there still people working there?
That's not clear. They haven't updated their website in a while. Like they still have that. Because of the tax deadline, we're overburdened right now or whatever, but they haven't changed. The website hasn't changed in months.
I have a feeling they're done. If they still haven't filed people's taxes, there's a lot of liability there now.
Yeah.
Maybe a class action lawsuit coming.
I don't know how they can push through that. Yeah. That's not good for them.
So I have an update on California matters, which could end up impacting all of us.
Oh, I was hoping you'd bring this. This is
It's the AB5. It's the bill that would reclassify a bunch of gig economy workers into part-time or full-time employees. And this would affect Lyft and Uber. And it was specifically targeting them, but it will end up impacting a lot of businesses. And calmatters.org has a great article talking about who is in and who's out of AB5, because like any legislation, there are businesses that have lobbied to be excluded from this new treatment.
So my gut instinct would be is like, where do accountants fit in? Where do bookkeepers fit in? So
there's a good infographic in the article listing out the jobs impacted by AB5. Here are the groups of people that would likely be forced to reclassify into employees due to the new stricter standards for freelancers. Rideshare and delivery services such as Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Postmates, truck drivers, janitors and housekeepers, health aides, newspaper carriers, unlicensed manicurists. The licensed manicurists get a 2-year exemption. Land surveyors, landscape architects, geologists, campaign workers, language interpreters, strippers, and rabbis are all going to have to now be employees rather than contractors. I don't know why rabbis specifically. And the groups that will be exempted include, so these are the people who aren't going to be impacted and will continue to be able to be contractors: doctors, some licensed professionals, such as lawyers, architects, and engineers, financial services, which includes accountants and investment advisors, real estate agents, direct sales, provided the salesperson's compensation is based on actual sales rather than wholesale purchases or referrals, commercial fishermen until 2023, builders and contractors, professional services such as marketers, HR administrators, travel agents, graphic designers, grant writers, fine artists, freelance writers and photographers, provided that the worker contributes no more than 35 submissions to an outlet in a year. Hairstylists and barbers, as long as they set their own rates and schedule. Estheticians, electrologists, and manicurists. I have no idea what an electrologist even is. They have to be licensed, though, to qualify as exempt. Tutors, provided they teach their own curriculum, does not apply to public school tutors. And lastly, AAA affiliated tow truck drivers are exempt. Whew, quite a list.
And the two companies that are fighting this the most is Uber and Lyft, and they have huge pocketbooks and huge legal teams. So it'll be interesting to see where, for the next coming election, where this all lands in California.
Like you said, Lyft and Uber are likely to be the most impacted, although the trucking industry, that's a big deal. And that's really going to change things for truckers. Lyft and Uber have vowed to fight this at the ballot box. So in California, we have a direct initiative system where anyone, if they get enough signatures, can put a measure on the ballot to be voted on, like direct democracy, right? So the voters of California will likely get to vote themselves at the next election as to whether or not this bill should be struck down. And it'll be interesting to see how many people like care about Uber and Lyft, and the workers. I'm really curious to know how many actual drivers want to be contractors versus employees. Like, has anyone asked the drivers what they think? The big impact is going to be higher costs, right? If this goes through, then Lyft and Uber are going to have to charge more for rides because they're going to be having to pay into all these benefits, for part-time employees. I'm torn on this. I see the point of, like, some people, this is their full-time job and they're not getting Social Security and Medicare. They're not getting unemployment, all these protections for workers. But then for a lot of people, Lyft and Uber, it's a part-time thing. It's what they do extra. And so, like,
side hustle.
Yeah. And you're just making it harder now for Lyft and Uber to have those people come on the platform and come off of it. And they'll probably use fewer of those side hustle people and probably more like closer to full-time people, because it's just always cheaper to have fewer employees because you just have less to worry about.
Well, some of this is the innovation life cycle, right? Like, somebody creates something innovative, then it starts getting regulated, and then it becomes slow and stodgy. Then Lyft and Uber themselves will want regulations because it keeps competition out of the market, right? It's just, this cycle goes on, and it has gone on for history. And eventually some new startups will disrupt this whole game.
And let's not forget, this could really impact cloud accounting firms because a lot of firms employ contractors. And I did this with Cloud Source Accounting. I employed a lot of contract bookkeepers to work part-time in my practice, especially if they were out of state, right? Like, and I didn't want to deal with employment. Now, we eventually switched them all to employee status because we didn't want to deal with the risk of, having them reclassified or something like that at some later date. But I think there's a lot of firms that are using contractors, especially during busy season. And in California anyway, the new rule is that if it's core to your business, if it's a core service in an accounting firm doing taxes, for instance, it's a core service, then like you won't be able to pay those people as contractors necessarily. Although the exemption is for accountants. So I guess bookkeeping, I don't know what the definition is. Like, you'd have to actually dig into the law and see if that specific person is exempt or not. Anything else we want to talk about? So
we could talk about influencers.
Oh, like Instagram influencers?
Instagram influencers, LinkedIn influencers, quote unquote QuickBooks stars, right? There's a lot of different people in this space that are influencers. Arguably, like, we're in that space, right?
Do you consider yourself an influencer, David?
I don't know. I jokingly, because of there's been a lot of discussions happening. All right, I'm not answering the question, right?
Okay. Would you ever put influencer on your LinkedIn like subtitle? I did better than that, because there's been a lot of arguing going on LinkedIn about influencer lists and this list and this list. I actually just changed my last name to David Thought Leary.
So I'm not an influencer. I'm a thought leader. That's the other set of people. Madeline Reeves wrote a blog post on her blog, Fearless in Training. And her argument is, because of social media, people could decide to become an influencer or a thought leader, and then exploit social media to become that versus, in the olden days, like you'd have to put in work for 10 years and then you didn't go out, you didn't set out to be a thought leader or to set out to be a influencer, but it just happened, right? And what's happened now is this whole influencer economy is just, and you probably get emails and you probably get LinkedIn connections and they have it right in their title. I'm an influencer. I'm a thought leader. And so she has a good blog post on it. And there's been, and we'll get the links in the show notes. There's 2 or 3 threads on LinkedIn because some people have made lists of the top LinkedIn influencers in the accounting industry. And then there's this other 4-quadrant chart ranking other people. And then obviously Avalara puts out that top social media people on Twitter. Yep. So there's these lists are out there and I think they're all what they are. My competitive side's I want to be number one. I get it, right? I have an ego. I want to be number one in these lists. But at the same time, they're really just a way for people to just get attention on all the other people and get free exposure, right? Simple as Avalara. Avalara makes that list of those 100 people because every week, guess what happens? Those 100 people talk about the Avalara on the list. And it's the same reason, some of these companies will do hey, come vote on these things. Vote for the top bookkeeper, vote for the top accounting firm. And then it's just so whatever property is doing that voting, you're making your readers or the people on the list drive traffic to your site to go vote for them. Right. And so it's all about eyeballs and all in that. But people are very, very argumentative about this. And people are accusing each other of collusion to fake the numbers. It's a little on the crazy side the last 2 weeks.
The funny thing is I imagine that most of the people looking at this stuff it's just a bunch of influencers all, influencing each other. It's just an echo chamber.
It's belly button.
Yeah. And
it is.
And
yes,
here are my thoughts on this. It's first of all, don't call yourself an influencer or a thought leader. That's something that other people should be calling you, right? So I have
to change my LinkedIn name now?
Well, I like yours because it's funny, right? But whenever I see somebody who has thought leader in their LinkedIn profile, up front there, I just, I don't know. I understand self-promotion. You got to do it. And sometimes you just got to call yourself something for other people to start doing it too. But I don't know. I don't like that. And I see the problem with a lot of these folks, right? Or some of these folks is, it doesn't seem like there's people out there talking about how to build a firm, how to sell a firm, how to be great at sales, how to make your marketing amazing. And they've never done it themselves. That's problematic. But I think people see through that, right? I hope they would. I think the other big problem with these lists is it just incentivizes bad behavior. So the Avalara list, that's cool. It's fun to be on that list. But then I think, well, the way this list is generated is based on how many people are liking the stuff that you post on Twitter or how many people are retweeting it. So then if you really want to just game the system, you just got to create a bunch of controversy and say a bunch of nothing and just get retweeted, right? It is not about actually saying anything meaningful. And so you can game those systems, right? Same thing as a list that's based on how many LinkedIn followers you're getting, right? Well, I could just pay somebody to go and connect with everybody on LinkedIn. So anyway, it's just silly. And I bet nobody even cares anyway, outside of the people who are on the list.
Oh, absolutely. In the grand scheme, we talk about all this time, in the grand scheme of everything, we don't exist. The people on that list don't exist. We're just
nobody knows who these people are.
Everybody's very upset about this.
So, David, we need more followers so that we can advance to the top of these lists.
We're going right into this.
So if you want to help me conquer the influencer heap of just crap, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message with your invite, please, and let me know that you're a listener, and I would love to connect with you and learn more about what you're up to. I'm also on Twitter at Blake T. Oliver. How about you, David?
Oh, I'm at David Leary on Twitter, but apparently my focus right now is LinkedIn. I have to get more LinkedIn followers to move up on these other lists. So go to LinkedIn and follow me and my stuff on LinkedIn, because that's my ego needs that. And as always, you can find the Cloud Accounting Podcast on all the socials. Just search for Cloud Accounting Podcast, and you can stay on top of all the news articles and things that we post out during the week.
Yep.
And then what else?
Head to my website at blakeoliver.com and click the blue subscribe banner at the top to get on my email list, and I will email you the show notes and notify you when new episodes are up.
And don't forget to head over to your favorite iTunes podcast player and leave a review.
Oh, we got some reviews we have to read, David.
Oh, yeah. Let's read those, and then we'll give the other location for Podchaser.
Here's the first one. This is from Healy Hoops, 5 stars. Go-to podcast for tech-forward accountants. Blake and David are the leaders in accounting tech news, gossip, and thought leadership. Oh, no.
Thought leadership. I got it.
All accounting leaders should pay attention to these guys to know what accounting technology is coming around the curve. Well, thank you, Healy. You said it, not me.
We officially, now we can put that on our LinkedIn profile. That's awesome. Here's one. This is Cloud Accounting Pro, 5 stars. This one's actually on Podchaser.
This is from Cloud Counting Pro.
Oh, Cloud Counting. See, I have to get thicker glasses, Blake. Okay, Cloud Counting Pro. Blake and Davis, so hopefully it's just a typo, hash it out on each episode with an in-depth look at the news and technology in the accounting industry. Each brings a unique perspective that comes together to form the best accounting podcast around. Blake's smooth voice doesn't hurt.
Oh, I thank you.
Bringing their episodes to your ears and your brain will thank you.
Awesome. Last one from Jazz Fun. The speed of technology has nothing on David and Blake. They truly are ahead of the curve, and it is entertaining and fun to listen to each podcast, talking about truly relevant information that affects our day-to-day lives. The Cloud Accounting Podcast is a requirement if you are in the accounting industry. And I think that's Jan. So thank you, Jan, so much for that.
And thanks for all your support. Like, we are now the #1 business news podcast on Podchaser because of all your great reviews. So thank you so much.
All right, that's it for me, David.
All right, that's a wrap.
Bye.
Bye.